So, today we're going to be discussing a topic I feel very passionately about as a long-form content creator of nearly 10 years. Go ahead and get the comments out ahead of time, because I know they're coming. But anyway, I'm very interested in how it's changed over time and how it's seemingly decreased to a drastic degree due to short-form content and many other factors coming into it. But in order to truly look into this, I feel like we have to look at it from an objective standpoint all the way back to 1950. So, yeah, let's just get into it.
I see a victor than any other TV for dependability.
So around 1950, you obviously had the introduction of television, like wide-span television. Because before 1950, and really the mid-1950s up to 1960, there was a 9% to 87% increase of average Americans that had TVs in their household. Before this, it was kind of a very niche thing that only the top wealthiest people had. And even with these original TV stations, it was very slow programming. You know, you didn't really have much visual stimuli. It was very just rudimentary pacing, typically rudimentary stories. I mean, even Westerns would be very slowly paced, and even the action scenes would be something that would be almost a meme nowadays, but back then it was action-packed to people because you just didn't have as much content. You even had kids' cartoons back then that, while they were still wacky and fun, it was nothing compared to your Toon Toon Sahurs of today's kids' generation that are getting fed AI slop. But we're not going to get too big into that right now because that's for the end of the video. So after that first initial era of television, you know, obviously people's attention spans would have been changed even back then from really not having any access to on-demand entertainment like that, other than like, you know, record players or things of that sort. You know, even telephones were still very rudimentary back then, to the point where you couldn't just pick it up and call anybody anywhere in the world you wanted to, hop on Discord. You know, it's like things were just way more simple. So as an effect of that, people were gonna naturally have a better attention span to everyday things and be able to pay attention and live in the moment more. But without yapping about that too much, we move on to the 1980s and really 1990s era, where you start to get stations like MTV that are popping up and starting to dominate television. Now, I don't really see a huge change here because, yes, television was getting faster, and there are studies to corroborate that, yes, the average duration of a scene in a show went down almost double from the time of the original 50s television to the television of the 80s and 90s. As many of you know, this was also when many shows started popping up that are more akin to reality TV and sitcoms that we have now, albeit not as good in my opinion. At least the ones we have now. I prefer a lot of older shows. I feel like every time I watch a show from like 2005, which was my birth year, and before, it just gives me a different sense. But I've already made whole retrospectives on nostalgia, so if you guys want to hear me yap about that for 30 minutes alone, go click that video right there. But then we get into the early 2000s. You've got mail. And this is where we kind of get introduced to the earliest form of the internet, chat forums, chat logs, very basic forms of social media. But obviously at this time, it wasn't something the average person was going to really get sucked into for a large amount of time. Bro, side tangent, I've had this G-Shock watch for years and years and years, guys. And for some reason, every day without fail, at 1 p.m., this thing will beep. There's an attention span metric for you guys. Hey, tell me, put in the comment section if you made it to the G-Shock. I think we're only a few minutes into this, so by God, if y'all ain't still here, then my whole point of this video is definitely proven. But anyway, so with the 2000s, you obviously had internet access, but it was very limited to the point where you had to be near a desktop to really access it. Unless you were one of the few people who bought like the thousands of dollars laptops that came out back in, the early 2000s. Now, once you get up to around like the mid to late 2000s, really like 07, 08, 09, especially 2010, laptops did start becoming more popular. But I'm mainly talking about the mid 2000s, because I really do truly feel from the 1950s up to the 2000s, there wasn't a huge change in attention span. Aside from things such as when emails were introduced, obviously people probably got a dopamine rush from checking their emails, which is crazy because that's such a rudimentary task to us now. But if you think about it, that would have been crazy technology for people to just be able to send messages back and forth like that on the internet before, modern chats were a thing. But see, moving past all that, because really we can argue all day about whether attention spans got worse from, the days of everybody going to the diners and wearing poodle skirts to the Y2K movement. But where I truly feel it started was the introduction of smartphones in 2007.
This is the web. And this is a call on your iPhone.
Now, obviously, I'm looking at this from a perspective of somebody that was only 2 years old in 2007. So, obviously, I wasn't using those original phones. For reference, my first iPhone that I had, or my first smartphone, was an iPhone 5 that I got probably around the time I was in about, I want to say, 7th or 8th grade. So, the thing is, I can't really speak too much to those. But I do recognize, just from seeing how they've progressed, that if the smartphones would have never been introduced, our society would be a completely different place. And for many reasons, I think we'd be worse off without them. But for attention span purposes, the point of this video, my smartphone takes away my attention from a lot of things. I won't lie to you. I'd be a hypocrite if I said it didn't. But, I'm not going to get too deep into why it does nowadays, but just looking at when because I'll be talking about that plenty here in a minute. But as far as back in 07 when they first came out, it introduced mobile games to people, like, basic mobile games, which is one of the things that still locks me in to this day. But it also introduced early forms of social media. 2007 is also a year that, if you're a keen viewer, you may remember YouTube came out, and the first few videos of YouTube started being released. And this really is where the new age of media was born and ushered in. And I love YouTube, especially the original purpose of YouTube in its true form, where it was just long form content before shorts invaded the platform and AI was a thing, and you just had people making genuine content. And when I say genuine content, I mean truly genuine, because from around 2007 to, I'd say, up to about 2015, most of the popular creators and top guys on YouTube were your PewDiePies, Markipliers, Jacksepticeyes, dudes that were sitting behind a desk making videos, and especially in the early days, didn't need all of the, fast-pacing, brain rot edits. They were just able to connect with their audience through their sheer personality alone, which I think is something that obviously still happens now. People don't just want to watch a robot. Well, most people. But the problem is there's so much content, and it's such a saturated market now, to where I feel like creators, including myself, feel like we often have to do all these stupid edits that really don't even belong in the video just for retention's sake. And see, for somebody like me, I love editing. I think it's an art. But I think we've gotten to a point with it where, to be in the top percent of YouTube, you almost have to be like Mac, if anybody knows him. You have to almost make movies. Either make movies or make AI slop, which is, oh God, again, I keep mentioning AI. Trust me, we're getting there. I'm just trying to lead up to the point, you know what I mean? Hey, I do journalism, so we might as well cover some of this shit. So then we're kind of led up into 2016, which I would say is when the groundwork was really starting to be laid for our modern attention spans.
I'm the lit, bro, and today's about to be crazy. You don't even know what's about to happen.
and the point that it's reached now, where I feel like people can't hardly pay attention to anything. Now, let me preface this with saying 2016 and that whole era, like the clout hype beast era, was one of my favorite times as a viewer on YouTube. Now, granted, I was like 11 at the time, so that probably has a lot to do with it, and we have rose-tinted glasses. But as an adult, I do kind of recognize the patterns of materialism starting to really form at this time. Because I feel like a lot of young kids, myself included, were watching these people like Rice Gum.
Can tell that you came with a Disney flow.
And, you know, FaZe Banks and even like FaZe Rug.
Hey guys, a brand new video. Thank you.
I mean, I was a big FaZe guy. Obviously, it's different for everybody. And all these like 3 a.m. challenges.
We are gonna be FaceTiming Georgie, guys. Yo, this is gonna be like so insane.
You know, that's really when it moved from genuine content to, in my opinion, kind of clickbaiting whatever, you know, you could possibly clickbait to get views, because that's around the time where people started really hopping on the YouTube wave. It was around that 2016 to like, you know, up till about COVID era, I'd say was really its own true identity. You had people like Wolfie Raps and like I said, FaZe Rug doing like challenge videos. And then, you know, on the other side of it, you had the hype beast, you know, clout chaser era of things with Rice Gum kind of leading the pack with Jake Paul and Logan, and really like the diss track era. That was all really, to me, the start of the decline for YouTube. And it's crazy to say because I did love that, but in retrospect, I kind of don't like it because it's led to everybody using the same thumbnails now. Everybody uses the same titles. It's because a lot of people are still trying to use what worked back then, and a lot of times it still does. And it just set a certain precedent where, you know, people were using women to get clicks, like clickbaiting their girlfriends' bodies. I remember everybody doing, it's like, you know, I could make a whole video about the era of YouTube, and I actually think I do have that in my notes, so I'm not going to yap too much about it. But yeah, I just wanted to bring that up to say, to me, although not fully what it is today yet, I think about 10 years ago is really where the main point of this video I'm trying to get across really started. Which is also important to mention that in 2016, Musical.ly was very popular, which was basically the precursor to TikTok, which is really the whole devil of this thing that we're about to get into. So just keep that in mind. Musical.ly was already around and it was very popular. Vine was around and very popular, both short form media outlets. But the difference between them, I think, is AI was not a thing yet. People were still making very basic content. It was actually kind of funny because it was all original. Now, let's move on to the meat and potatoes and really the end of this video, but the main portion of the video. Where the attention gates truly fell, in my humble opinion, is a two-part system that really worked hand in hand to bring the gates down and just turn everybody into lobotomized TikTokites. And that would be in 2018 when TikTok merged with Musical.ly, creating the app that we all know and some love today. And also the fact that AI came out around 2023, and obviously it was pretty noticeable at that point, people, and it was actually kind of funny when it first came out. I remember seeing that original video that everybody uses for the benchmark of Will Smith eating the spaghetti, and you know, I thought it was pretty funny because I'm like, you know, this looks like some really shitty claymation or something, like, you know, harmless. You know, at that time I was thinking, hopefully this won't ever reach a point where people can't tell the difference. But if you're living in 2026 like I am, you know that did not happen that way. Because even since TikTok came out, I feel like people's opinion and viewpoint on content creation has shifted very drastically. But when the AI videos started popping up is really the death of it all. Because especially younger kids, and I almost feel bad for them. Because yes, while I was being subjected to content that was definitely putting ideas in my head that weren't the best, at least they were being fed to me by real people. And at least when I grew up, a lot of these people have also matured and moved on to better things, showing me that, yes, obviously they were just searching for views. You shouldn't be taking life advice from, LA influencers, obviously. But, now these people, these kids specifically, and also old people, are getting targeted by all these AI slopified reels that half the time you can't even tell if they're real. It'll be a heartfelt story about a war veteran and they're asking for donations. And then, you find out it's not even a real person. Or say, you're watching a channel, you're like 7, 8 years old, just found YouTube. You find this channel that you really love. And then come to find out it's a fully automated AI channel. Most of those kids are not going to know the difference. They don't know that there's better content out there. There's real people created, because you can't tell the difference a lot of times. And a lot of them just don't care, even with the ones where you can tell the difference. There's all these videos of celebrities doing crazy shit, like, and just random characters, like I mentioned earlier, like Tun Tun, like all the Italian brain rot stuff, which I won't lie, it was a little bit funny to me at first, but man, like it doesn't have staying power. It's not good for people because it's just lowering, when you're scrolling and all you see is just these 10-second clips of nothing but bullshit, but it trains your brain to be entertained by it. And that's why I honestly don't even use TikTok. I don't really watch shorts. I don't get on Instagram Reels, Facebook Reels, any of the short form content varieties aside from maybe Snapchat stories, like not the video ones, but just my personal friends. I really do not like short form content because it has, with the combination of AI, it has really destroyed people's idea of content creation. You now have changes being made to YouTube with the monetization rules. And I truly believe the main crux for that was the fact that people are creating channels solely to make money through automating them with AI, which takes no real human input, no work. And it's like, this is definitely a little rant, but if you made it this far, I highly doubt you give a shit and probably agree with me on this. But to me, AI creators are not real creators. I've dedicated a huge portion of my life to this, and it's almost disrespectful to me when I see people complaining about, oh, I think I should quit. I've been at this a month, and they'll have millions of views on their shorts, but it's always these AI fucking slop tubers that have no business even being on the platform, but then have the gall to be like, oh, I've been doing this for a month and only got 10 million views. I need 20 million for monetization. I don't know if I can keep doing this. Like, brother, you're not doing any work typing in a prompt. You're not doing any work, adjusting the prompt. Like all these people that say AI takes so much work, just as much as content creation normally does. Hell no, it doesn't. And people can tell. When I hear an AI voice on a video or I see an AI thumbnail, which that's a little bit different because a lot of times I already know it's a real person, so I'll let that slide. But if it's a person I've never seen before and they have a very obviously AI thumbnail, or they have an AI voice narrating their shit, or AI animations that I can obviously tell, I'm not watching that because I don't respect it personally. I want to see attention spans go back up. It even goes further into the film industry where now you have directors and showrunners for all these Netflix shows that have their characters over-explained every single thing they do because they know second screen viewing is so bad. I'm not even going to get too much into second screen viewing because, there's plenty of articles and studies you can go read on that, and it could honestly be its own video. And hell, it may be if you guys want to hear me yap about things like this more, because this is a topic I debate with people very often because I'm in the generation that was right before where I think this truly became a major issue. And I even notice it with a lot of people my age. Even some people a little older than me, even, people my parents' ages. A lot of times they will get sucked into watching these just bullshit reels and TikToks. And when it comes time to watch a film or watch a, documentary or watch just anything that takes true attention, like true, you need to watch it to get the context. They just lose the plot. It's like people can't pay attention. You go to a movie and everybody's on their phone, everybody's talking during the movie. It's like, I just don't get it. To me, as somebody that loves media the way I do, and somebody who's created it for so long, I feel like it's being bastardized when you can't pay attention to something for longer than 10 minutes. And the fact that contents came to the point it is where, shorts and TikTok, like short form is honestly dominating over long form for the majority of creators now. And I hate that because I feel like the bar for entry is just raising and raising for new genuine creators who want to get into this, because now people, especially these younger kids that look at what's working right now, they're obviously going to see that it's much easier and faster to use AI to do everything. And if it's working for other people, why can't it work for them? And the problem with that is, if we all have that mindset, then true art is dead. It doesn't exist anymore. If we're just letting robots control everything we're intaking and outputting, then at that point we might as well just die. Seriously, that may be a wild take to make, but in my personal opinion, bro, if we are just letting robots control our lives, then at that point, what are you doing? You don't have autonomy. You have no say in that. Sure, you can tell the prompt what to do, but you didn't sketch that shit out. You didn't edit that. You didn't touch a single bit of it. I could rant about AI for like 30 more minutes, but I really didn't want this video to even be as long as it already has been. So, yeah, man, I hope y'all enjoyed this little rant. Overall, attention spans have just drastically decreased. Drastically. I mean, there's no like finite studies out there to confirm it, because it's really hard to track attention span across a mass amount of people, obviously without bringing us all in for monitoring, which is just not possible on a large scale. But I think we can all notice it and tell that, especially in the younger generation, which is crazy that I'm even saying that, 'cause I'm only 21, but it's true. And even in the younger generation, there is a lot of just people who don't know how to be social. They don't know how to watch anything without it being just constantly stimulating. And I have ADHD, man. I can get it. But at the same time, no. No. My brain is not stimulated by that. If anything, it just makes me angry when I see all this AI shit. So, yeah. I'm going to quit yapping. Hope you guys enjoyed this little rant. If you guys want me to come on here and just talk about some more shit that just irks me, or just look into the history of some more things, that'd be cool. But yeah, make sure to come back again for whatever I do next, and I'll see you soon. Love y'all, man.